Hey everyone, and welcome to skillcapped's tier list and rundown for patch 10.10. Wow, there are some truly meta-changing buffs and nerfs on this patch, with some of the top picks in each role being taken down a peg. On top of this, some of League's oldest champions are receiving some love from Riot, with the likes of Twisted Fate, Udyr, and Annie receiving buffs, and some of them are actually pretty big. This is definitely one of League's more important patches of late, so you don't want to miss it. Speaking of which, Riot recently announced their plans to nerf mid lane and buff bot lane, and that got us wondering, which roles do you think are the strongest and weakest in League of Legends right now? We'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments section below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit that bell icon to keep up to date with the latest strategies and start taking your game to the next level. Alright, let's jump straight into it, starting with top lane. Kled will be receiving a nerf to his Q abilities cooldown, increasing it from 9 to 7 to 11 to 7. Kled has kind of been a sleeper OP champion for a while now. In the higher elo brackets, he's one of the strongest picks, sporting a 53% win rate. However, the rest of the player base hasn't really caught onto this, with his pick rate being at a relatively low 4%. Now, on the surface, this nerf to Kled's Q can look somewhat scary if you main him. This is because Kled maxes his Q ability first, and typically whenever you see a nerf hitting the ability a champion maxes first and his main damaging tool, you can expect their win rate to drop. Here's the thing though, the cooldown on his Q will still be the same once it's max rank, and with him maxing it first, this means the nerf won't hurt him too badly. Additionally, top lane right now has a lot to do with itemization, with champions that can use the buffed Blade of the Ruined King, Tiamat upgrades, and Death's Dance becoming dominant. With no nerfs to these items, Kled will still remain a dominant pick, but we do think that hitting the cooldown on his main ability will be enough to drop him from the OP tier to the S tier. We also have a buff to Irelia. And yes, I'm pretty sure the entire player base just collectively winced at that statement. Her E damage is being increased from 70 to 230 to 80 to 260. That's a flat 10 damage increase at rank 1 and 30 at rank 5. Keep in mind that most players already max her E second anyway, so the flat 30 damage increase at rank 5 will kick in earlier than you'd expect. For these reasons, we'll be raising Irelia from B tier into the A tier. Next, we have some nerfs for the tanky tree, and that is Maokai. He's having his Q mana cost increased from 50 to 60. Now, we have to admit, if Maokai wasn't going to receive any nerfs this patch, we were definitely planning on increasing him into the OP tier. He's by far the strongest tank, he's safe into every matchup, he has great scaling and teamfight utility, and he's all around one of the most consistent picks right now and is relatively forgiving and easy to play as well. His win rate alone is one of the highest in top lane at 54%, which is insane considering that he's a tank. And don't get us wrong, the extra 10 mana cost on his Q ability is significant, as it's one of the main abilities that he spams when fighting in lane. However, in the past several months we've seen nothing but nerfs to so many of the other top laners that it's created a power vacuum in the role. Even with Q costing 10 more mana, we still don't see most other top laners coming close to his power level. In fact, check this out, even though Maokai is getting a nerf, we're actually still increasing him into the OP tier. That's how strong we think he is right now, and if you like playing tanks, he should be your go-to pick. Alright, heading into the tier list, you'll see that not too much has changed. Wukong and Fiora are still in the OP tier, with Maokai replacing Kled. And can we just take a second to appreciate just how overpowered Wukong is right now? Even after repeated nerfs, he's arguably the strongest top laner. What's crazy isn't just that his average win rate sits at 53%, but for those that master him, he sports the highest average win rate of 61%. He's truly one of those champions that just ascends to godlike status once you play him enough. One other pick that you should really be on the lookout for this patch is Quinn Top. Last patch, she saw one of the smallest buffs in the history of League, with her Q blind duration being increased by 0.25 seconds. Now, this isn't what has seen her win rate skyrocket. It was the buff to Sanguine Blade last patch, which is the core item that she rushes in top lane. Since then, her win rate has jumped from 50 to 52% in top lane, so definitely a hype train that you may want to jump on to get that free low. For low elo picks, that's gold and below, we recommend Tryndamere, Jax, and Maokai. Tryndamere and Jax are the go-to 1v9 solo carry picks that will let you ignore your teammates and split to victory, whereas Maokai has replaced Mordekaiser in this slot for being more beginner friendly, forgiving to play, and straight stat checking opponents to win lane. For bans, we recommend Wukong, Mordekaiser, Maokai, and Darius. These are not only some of the strongest picks on the patch, but all four have the highest pick rates and so have the highest chance of you facing. Sweeping into the jungle, we have some nerfs to Kayn, specifically in his Rost form. His passive healing is being reduced from 34.5 to 43%, to 30 to 40% of damage dealt. This comes as no surprise, as just last patch we received some insane buffs that we predicted would push him into the overpowered tier. And he's definitely completely broken right now, sporting a 53% average win rate and 62% win rate for players that master him. Losing some of his healing is definitely a nerf, but we just don't see it being enough to drop him down from the OP tier. Kayn in his Rost form is definitely one of the true 1v9 solo carry champions right now, so take advantage of him while you can, as we expect future nerfs from Riot. Leaping forward, we have a buff to Nidalee. Her Q AP ratio is being increased from 40 to 50%. Nidalee has been in a bit of a weird spot for a while now. We wouldn't exactly call her weak, but her skill requirement is so high that we only ever see the best players having success with her. And although a 10% increase on one of her main damaging abilities is a decent buff, we just don't see it fixing that problem. Sure, if you've mastered Nidalee, you'll now find her stronger, but for most champions, she'll still be an A tier champ. Udyr is also getting a buff, with his movement speed being increased from 345 to 350. Now, don't laugh. I know it's tempting to bring out the +5 movement speed meme. Here's the thing, movement speed buffs can be more complicated than they appear. In the case of Udyr, his biggest issue is being kited, so the extra movement speed directly buffs his biggest weakness. At the same time, Udyr is well known for having a very fast clear speed in the jungle. Because of this, a buff to his movement speed is actually a buff to his clear speed, since at a certain point you can kill camps so fast, it's actually the time it takes you to move between camps that is slowing you down. Is an extra 5 movement speed suddenly going to make him the best champion in the game? No, but it's bigger than you might initially think. Because of this, we'll be increasing Udyr from the B tier into the A tier. Alright, full clearing into the jungle tier list where you'll find Wukong, Zac, Nunu, Graves, Kayn, Olaf, and Karthus in the overpowered tier. For those of you with a keen eye, you'll have noticed that for the first time Echo has dropped out of the OP category into the S tier. This may seem a bit unexpected considering that there hasn't been any actual nerfs to Echo. However, what there has been is a total shift in the jungle meta. Farming junglers are currently the dominant picks, a change of pace from the previous aggro junglers like Elise and Lee Sin. And it looks as though Echo just isn't quite as powerful against this farming playstyle. We've pretty much seen Echo's win rate slowly drop every single patch to an average 50%. This is likely due to the fact that in the more aggressive meta, Echo was able to not only match the enemy jungler's early aggression, but then outscale them. Now, with the meta junglers having great scaling like Zac, Graves, Kayn, and Karthus, that's no longer a unique strength of his. Another champion to be on the lookout for this patch is Fiddlesticks. We've increased him from the A tier into the S tier, and he's even bordering on OP territory. On release, Fiddlesticks was laughable, having one of the lowest win rates in the game. However, since his buffs on patch 10.7, we've seen his win rate skyrocket and keep increasing every patch, currently sitting at 53%. Our low elo recommendations this patch, that's gold and below, are Warwick, Kayn, and Graves. Warwick is the most beginner-friendly champion that you want to pick if you want to focus on improving at the role itself. Kayn and Graves are the 1v9 solo carry champions that you can use to get yourself out of low elo. For bans, we recommend Wukong, Graves, and Kayn. These three champions are not only some of the strongest champions on the patch, but also have the 3 highest pick rates. Roaming into the mid lane, we have some nerfs to the current top picks. Diana is having her base health reduced from 594 to 570. For those who might be living under a rock, Diana has been considered OP pretty much since her rework. She has an average win rate of 53%, with players that master her having a win rate of 60%. This nerf isn't too significant, mainly because it's not hitting any of her damage, and having 24 less health equates to about half the health a Doran's Ring gives you. We just don't see this nerf being big enough to drop her down from the OP bracket. Katarina, on the other hand, is having her damage lowered. Her passive's AP ratio is being reduced from 55 to 100 per champion level to 55 to 88. There's no doubt about it, this is a big deal. Not only are they hitting her damage, which usually guarantees it will make the champion weaker when they're an assassin, but they're specifically focusing on her daggers. Her passive damage from picking up her daggers is where the majority of her damage comes from, so even a small reduction really adds up over the course of a fight and trades in lane. We expect Katarina to drop from the OP tier into the S tier because of this. These aren't all nerfs in the mid lane though. Twisted Fate is receiving a buff with his base AD being increased by 2 and his ultimate's mana cost being lowered by 50. The 2 extra base AD is nice, especially due to how Twisted Fate likes to look for a lot of auto attacks and has an AD ratio on his W ability. However, that 50 mana reduction on his ultimate is massive. For those of you who have never played TF, it's super common to hit level 6, but being unable to ult due to being out of mana. This often forces you to recall, buy some items and regen your mana, head back to lane, and then look to ult. With his ultimate now costing 50 less mana, this fixes this very specific weakness, and we have no doubt he'll become more powerful. We aren't confident enough to put him into the OP tier just yet, so he'll remain near the top of the S tier for now. Annie of all champions is also receiving a buff that is actually pretty big. Her E damage reduction is being increased from 10 to 22% to 13 to 29%. The aura damage from Tibbers is also being increased from 10 to 20 flat damage with a 10% AP ratio to 20 to 40 flat damage and a 12% AP ratio, almost doubling its strength. Now, these aren't enough to suddenly push Annie into first pick, first ban territory, but it's definitely enough to push her up a tier. We'll be moving Annie from the C tier into the B tier, and given that Annie is a great beginner champion to play, if you've ever wanted to learn mid lane, now might be the best time to pick Annie and try it out. Heading into the tier list, we have Wukong, Talon, Fizz, Diana, Echo, and Kassadin in the OP bracket. Now you've probably noticed that Wukong is in the OP bracket for every single role right now. If you aren't either picking or banning this champion, then you need to rethink what you're doing with your life. This monkey's power level has been shot into space and is hitting astronomical levels, and the fact that he isn't getting a nerf this patch is questionable to say the least. Another mid lane pick that you should be on the lookout for this patch is Cassiopeia. She's currently sporting a 53% average win rate and a 61% win rate for those that master her. And mastering her will take some time as she's one of the more difficult champions to play. The mid lane meta hasn't completely shifted in her favor, with strong assassin counter picks like Fizz still being popular, but she definitely works well into the meta picks found in other roles. There are a lot of tankier picks found in the jungle and support right now, which she's great at kiting and DPSing down. And with AD carries arguably being on the weaker side after recent nerfs, she doesn't have to worry about being outscaled or outranged by them. Overall though, games are just a bit less snowbally than before, with early aggro junglers falling out of the meta, and so she also has more time to scale herself. For our low elo picks on this patch, that's gold and below, we recommend Kassadin, Fizz, Annie, and Talon. If you're still learning the fundamentals of mid lane, then Annie is a great choice right now as she's straightforward to play and got some recent buffs this patch. For bans, we recommend Wukong, Diana, and Kassadin. These three champions have absurdly high win rates right now, while each having some of the highest pick rates at 8% or higher. Kiting into the AD carry changes, Miss Fortune is finally receiving a nerf. Her W max movement speed is being lowered from 60 to 100 to 50 to 90. The good news for you Miss Fortune mains out there is that they aren't hitting her damage at all. However, having 10 less movement speed at all levels on her W is definitely a nerf, as this will impact not only her ability to kite away from champions, but also to chase them down. It also impacts the speed at which she can get back to lane and rotate around the map. We are definitely tempted to lower her from the OP category, but she's literally the only ADC in it right now. We think it would be too early to pull the trigger on dropping her down, and will be keeping in the OP category for now. But don't be surprised if she's S tier by next patch as the meta continues to develop. Sivir is also receiving a unique buff this patch. The mana restore when her spell shield blocks in ability is being increased from 70 to 230 to 80 to 260. Definitely some big number increases, but to be honestly don't mean that much. She's going to max her E ability last, which means that she will only get the 10 mana restore for the majority of the game. Additionally, it's not as if she had mana issues before, so we'll be keeping her in the B tier for now. Jumping into the tier list, and we are definitely in the middle of a meta shift in bot lane. Miss Fortune stands precariously in the OP category by herself. In the S tier, we see a few AD carries of similar power levels: Caitlyn, Vayne, Senna, Ezreal. But at the same time, we see unorthodox picks like Yasuo, Cassiopeia, and Syndra also matching them in strength. There are a lot of things up in the air right now. Are mages going to make a comeback in the bot lane? Or will the strongest AD carries remain the top picks and just be a bit weaker compared to the other top champions of other roles? It's hard to say exactly right now, but Riot has announced that they are planning on adding more buffs to the entire role of AD carry. Whether this is in the form of itemization buffs or direct buffs to champions, we don't know yet, but when this does happen, which should be next patch, it will likely cause clear dominant picks to emerge. For now, we'll mostly be picking champions from the S tier. Speaking of picks, for low elo, our recommendations this patch are Miss Fortune, Caitlyn, and Ashe. Miss Fortune offers tremendous power for how simple she is to play, while Caitlyn and Ashe offer safety in the form of their high auto attack range. For bans, we recommend Miss Fortune, Vayne, and Caitlyn. These three are by far the most powerful champions who still have super high pick rates. And engaging into support, we have a buff to Soraka. She's having her Q damage increased from 75 to 215 to 85 to 225, and her W health refund when rejuvenated increased from 60 to 100 to 80 to 100%. These are some decent buffs and are a bit worrying considering that when Soraka gets too strong, she's shown a tendency this season to show up in the top lane. Soraka isn't too bad at the moment either, sitting at a 51% average win rate and 58% for those that master her. We think these buffs will be enough to increase her into the top of the A tier, and don't be surprised if suddenly top lane Soraka becomes a thing again. For nerfs, Taric is having his health per level lowered from 90 to 85, and his W bonus armor reduced from 10 to 20 to 10 to 14%. 5 less health per level equates to 90 less health at level 18, and 6% less bonus armor means that you're losing around 5 armor on average at level 9 on both Taric and his Link. These nerfs aren't too significant, but what's really unfortunate for Taric mains is that these nerfs are really aimed at the Taric mid funnel strategy with Master Yi jungle. Despite repeated attempts from Riot to nerf funnel strategies, they are still going strong, and directly nerfing Taric is clearly a last-ditch effort to try and deal with this problem. We think these nerfs will be enough to lower Taric from the A tier into the top of the B tier. Rolling into the tier list, what a surprise, Leona, Blitzcrank, and Nautilus are still holding the top spots in the OP bracket. If you all remember, last patch there were nerfs to both Bard and Nami, and so far it looks like they've been successful at keeping them in the S tier. This has made room for a few other supports to shine, most notably Janna and Lulu. Janna just keeps getting stronger on every patch and currently has a 53% average win rate. A lot of things are favoring her right now in the support meta. With engaged supports like Leona, Nautilus, and Blitzcrank being so popular, she helps counter them with her disengage. At the same time, the traditional counter to shield supports have been healing. Nami, Soraka, and Senna have all seen nerfs in the past several patches, which only further increases her strength. These same concepts apply to Lulu, who has an average 52% win rate at the moment, with a 60% win rate for those that master her. Overall, it's looking like the support meta has the powerhouse engage picks on one side and the disengage enchanter support on the other. For our low elo picks this patch, we have Blitzcrank, Bard, and Lulu. We've decided to swap Janna with Lulu despite both being close in power levels. We think Lulu is better in lower elo due to her having the option for more carry-oriented damage builds. For bans, we recommend Nautilus, Leona, Blitzcrank, and Yuumi. Nothing new here. You want to ban out the OP engage supports when possible, and Yuumi is important to ban out if you're facing a late game scaling strategy too much where an enemy pairs a champion like Kassadin with Yuumi. And finally, we have the section that we're all really here for, skins and chromas. The new Pulsefire skin line will be released this patch, with Echo, Fiora, Lucian, and Pantheon all receiving a Pulsefire skin at 1350 RP each. Lucian is unique in that he will be getting the rare Prestige edition for his Pulsefire skin, sending you back 2000 event tokens, whereas Echo, Fiora, and Pantheon will be receiving chromas. My favorite has to be the Pulsefire Pantheon, as I think it has the coolest effects with his shield and ultimate, but we'd love to hear what yours is in the comment section below. Alright, that's going to do it for skillcapped's patch 10.10 tier list. We would love to hear your guys' feedback. What about the tier list did you love? What do you want to see more of, and what do you think we could have done better? Alright, we here at skillcapped put a ton of work into our new tier list, and the best way for you to show your love and support is to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. Remember, the content you find on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement platform that you'll find on our website. If you're serious about improving and want to rank up, there's no better time than now to go to skillcapped.com, link in the description below. And as always, good luck and have fun on Summoner's Rift.